For the record, I want to acknowledge that Liz just said she hasn't decided if she's cold.
Or hot. I do have a hat on, bare feet.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm wearing a hat too. And my coat is all messed up. Hi, good morning, good morning. Look, I finished a hat.
It looks so cute.
I just had to have it acknowledged, and now my head's cold.
I thought I might get to finish my hat last night. But
I'm stuck. Wait. Oh, okay. You want, huh?
I thought I might get my hat finished, but because
but no, why? Cause
well, even though there's only a small amount of stitches on each of my needles, I decided to do it a little longer than an inch decrease this last row, and because I still have the yarn.
Oh. And see, this, I'm going to remind everyone and then do introductions that this is a yarn that
this is yarn we don't carry.
That she made.
I made it.
So cool.
But this yarn is Baby Butts and Unicorn Kisses.
Uh-huh.
And we carry it. It's online. And
this yarn, which is covering up other random yarn, was our Notion product of the week last week. That's the Entropy Chunky. Mm-hmm.
It looks cool.
Look what you missed. No. It's covering up random cottons for various reasons. Anyway, hot mess. Yay! Hello and welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
The Dear Becky and Lizzy edition.
Yes. And wasn't that a nice lead in? I watched, what were we watching? I think it was in Orville a few days ago with Brian, and there was a super long intro before they got to the credits and everything else. We just did our version. And I am Rebecca. I am the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber, pointing at the logo, not anything else, in sunny and chilly yet again.
But warming up.
Downtown Brevard, North Carolina. I wore a hat, so my fingers aren't as tingly today.
Is that like I wore a hat so I don't have to wear shoes?
Kind of. I didn't wear my winter coat knowing it would warm up. I wore my knit jacket, my fall jacket, over my COVID cardigan. So I had lots and lots of knit layers on today.
She does the whole Mr. Rogers layer up the sweaters.
Yeah, because he layers up.
Well, no. All of your Mr. Rogers sweaters, you have sweaters that you always wear at the shop. Mm-hmm. And if it's cold, she'll just layer them on. Just keep putting them on.
It viably could happen. I promise. Hey, who are you?
I'm Liz. I'm the minion there at Sun Dragon Art and Fiber here in downtown
where we are.
Mm-hmm. Where we are.
And I think I should have made this. Okay, this is our product, one of our products of the week, which I did get up. I remember this morning I hadn't put fire in the category, so it's there now. But this is one of our products of the week. It is Plymouth Moonshine. It's an alpaca and cotton blend. And I cannibalized this from a shawl that was never going to be finished. So it was the color I already had at home. I think if I made this again for me personally, I'd pick a color that pops a little bit more, like one of the darker ones. They all have these fleckies of white in them, so they're all a little on the, potentially from a far pale side. I think the dark blue teal or something.
And yesterday we realized while you were putting everything in the system, all the names we just said strawberry and sage and blue. They all have moon at the end of their names.
Yes, and they won't online or in my pictures because I'm lazy. I'm not lazy. I have too much to do. But yeah, so it's not blue. It's blue moon and strawberry moon and the gray icicle moon or gray something, gray harvest. I don't know. I don't remember. That's so sad. I forget what the orange. I don't think it was carrot moon. That'd be interesting. But anyway, go look online and find out. What? Pumpkin. You're right. Pumpkin moon. Because we are in pumpkin spice season for good or ill.
Ill. Definitely.
Everybody's got their own opinion on that.
And they're very, very set in those opinions on pumpkin.
I know.
Pumpkin is like, you either are for or you're against. There is no middle ground.
Yeah, that's true. So a couple of things before we get going. We are filming in the morning. The lighting's totally different. We don't have the golden hour glow.
I'm not blinded.
Yeah. It's right over there. The sunset happens right over there. Although with the time change, I don't know, we being more blinded or less. I can't figure that out.
I'd be blinded right as we started filming because sunset is like right around 5:30. So like as we're starting to film, it would be right in my line of sight.
We had multiple
and then
people.
It would be dark.
That's true. We have to go to our cars in the dark. We had multiple people who said they really liked last Thursdays, and shout out to Karen. She theorized maybe it's because you filmed later in the day, and maybe you should do that all the time. And unfortunately, I hate to disappoint. I don't think we're going to. That was a fluke because we didn't come in until midday, and we were oddly kind of busy, kind of not. So we had the energy at the end of the day to film, and even if it was a different energy, maybe a better energy. I don't think that's going to be par for the course. And if it is, that means that we're not selling anything, which is not good. No, I think it's easiest for us to keep the habit of trying to do it in the morning before everything starts, because we have unpredictable schedules when the day is over. Last Thursday, we had the opportunity to film, and we weren't interrupted. We were really worried we were going to be interrupted by people coming by. Oh, you're there. Anyway, so we're filming in the morning, and we'll call it quits when we have to call it quits. But we still have some time to talk right now. We're not feeling super rushed, you know.
Oh no,
the first thing I wanted to make sure that we didn't neglect. Shout out to a different Karen who was interested in how we hold tension when we knit, which means. And I was like, oh, my thing with the 7 strands of yarn will be great to show y'all all because it's big. And I left that at home because it's going to get tangled the more I bring it back and forth. So I have to go. I was like, oh, look, there's thick yarn, but that's unopened yarn. Oh, I can use that. I'm gonna go behind the camera and grab that.
Do you want me to reach and get it?
But you're knitting.
I'm.
So since you're knitting, why don't we start with you and how you hold tension?
How I hold tension.
She's switching needles now, which is a great time to show you, even though it's dark yarn and everything.
So, well, I'm pale today, so.
You're pale today? Are you not pale other days?
It's not summertime when I have a sunburn that turns into a tan because I've been outside.
Slightly darker than she is.
Yeah.
Actually, you get fairly dark, but there's darker. That's all I'm saying.
So I Continental Knit.
Which for the uninitiated in the crazy lingo of the knitting world is kind of boils down to holding the yarn in your left hand. There's other things, but at its basis.
And part of the reason for that is I spent 20 years crocheting before I started to knit.
And crocheters hold their yarn.
Left hand.
Sorry, we're both doing here.
It's okay.
Drink some water.
I will say that the book I learned to crochet from wanted me to hold my tension like Rebecca teaches her class to hold their tension. You weave it through your fingers, and if your fingers are open, it's loose, and if they're closed, it's tight. And tension. And
everyone finds their own way.
After about 2 years of just fiddling around with life and tension, I wrap it around come up through the inside, wrap it around my middle finger and over my first finger.
That's actually how I hold tension with my right hand. That's funny.
But if it's a dry day, like the air is super dry and it's just really slippy, I'll wrap it around twice. So it depends on.
So are you coming from underneath? People are seeing the backside, and that for me, that flips my brain out to not be watching it as I would be doing.
The yarn is closest to me.
Yeah, and then you do what I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I tell people, you know, when you're knitting English style, which is a very loose way to talk about holding the yarn in your right hand, some people will just kind of hold it in place as they go. May not be the best tension. What I've settled into, and I've held it all different ways. I've wrapped around my hand and settled in, but I actually, without knowing it, I have settled into the same thing she does.
And this is the first time we figured that out.
So thank you for the question, because I've always been like, she just wraps her yarn around her middle finger.
Yeah, she's like, Liz does this different thing. You can talk to her about that later, and the lesson goes on. Because I care.
I do, but I don't pay attention. I pay attention to some things and not others, apparently. So, but yeah, what I've settled into, and it's been hard to describe to people, is the same thing. Is I will kind of scoop from the backside. So I'll come around the backside and catch it with my middle finger and wrap it once around my middle finger. It's really hard to show that on camera. And then my first finger will duck under and away. So it's coming up, wrapping around, and then the first finger pulls to keep tension. And yeah, I would say the same thing. If I need to hold on to more, I'll wrap it twice. And then I can kind of go at it and not have to, because I've settled into, at this point, the English style of the Continental, which instead of, because for English, it's often called you're throwing the yarn around and between the needles. And there's, I was just talking about this in my tips and tricks video. English is considered throwing, and there's lots of motion involved. And Continental
is picking, because you're just reaching up.
But then, and there's a lot less kinetic motion involved, so it's considered, especially if you're a whiz at it, it's faster. And then there's something, which again, so I'm coming under, wrapping around, and putting this finger, the first finger under. Then there's something right in the middle for English knitters. Instead of holding it and throwing, you keep both hands on there and you flick, flick, flick. So you're still throwing, but you're not doing this. I may not get as much credit on my watch for taking steps if I do the flicking option. But the tension that I'm describing allows me to flick, and allows me to somewhat control my tension as I go. And I have to back some of that out because I'm doing a step before I'm supposed to on that. But anyway, but when I hold for Continental, I do the same thing I do for crochet. So we're talking about similar things here. And it's further away. Go check it out on my tips and tricks video, either the Continental knitting, the 2 videos I've put out for knitting and purling, or the intro crochet video. We'll talk about how to do this. And I learned this from a CD-ROM put out by DMC or something like that. Pre-YouTube. But the way I describe it now, I learned it, and now to describe it and teach people as easily as possible, I tell them, hold your hand, palm up. This is my left hand. And put the yarn, when you're a crocheter, and also for knitting, you don't want to start way out here, because if you do this crazy thing I'm about to show you, and you're way out here, there's no tension. You can always pull more yarn out, but start in close. So palm up, the yarn goes between my pinky and my ring finger, and then I circle around and back to, that calls position A. I'm gonna go around the outside of my pinky and back up between my pinky and my ring finger. So I'm in position A again, but it's wrapped around my pinky. I go over my ring finger and down, and I go back. I keep pulling it towards the left behind my, so it's underneath these first 2 fingers. But then I can flip this around so it's behind those 2 fingers. And again, I've already pulled too far, so the tension's not great. So I can reset. Pinky, wrap around it, over ring finger and down behind. That was fast, I know, sorry. But I have ability to hold, pulling with my first finger, or I can hold with my first finger on my needle and pull with my middle. I actually like keeping tension with my middle finger. So if I'm knitting English style, Continental style, I can't, I can't knit and think about words at the same time, apparently.
Nope.
It's not a thing. This is why Liz knits and talks, and I just talk to y'all. So I'm holding my needle with my first finger, and I'm pulling tension with my middle. That's what I've settled into with Continental knitting. And, but other people do it this way. With Continental purling, I actually hold tension with my first finger because I can move it and lock things down. I find I have to do that with purling. But that's a conversation for another day, or go watch my tips and tricks video. Next week, I'm doing Norwegian purling. That's fun. So that's tension. I suppose I could do the same thing Liz does over on this side, because that's what I do with my right hand. I could do it with my left hand. Of come from the back, wrap around my middle finger, and then duck my first finger under. People come up with all different kinds of ways to hold tension. They'll wrap around fingers. They'll do this and then hold, and it's really what works for you. I think the two methods that we're showing, I thought there would be three. That's kind of awesome that there's two, just with different hands. Gives you the most flexibility in some ways, but everyone's going to settle into what's comfortable.
I will say when I English.
When you're forced to because you're doing color work.
Because I'm doing color work, I just hold it.
You just hold it, yeah.
Because I haven't settled into how to do it. Because I just do it when I'm doing color work.
I suppose I could do the same tension thing with purling, but often with purling, I'm just holding it between my finger and my thumb. You can't see this on the other side, but I'm just pinching it like this, and it's popping out of the top just a little. And I'm letting that control my tension as I go when I purl. So I don't necessarily, I could wrap it around my fingers, but I don't do that as much when I purl. It's a thing. And you Norwegian purl.
I know Norwegian purl, so I just hold exact same. And
English style purling, I actually just pinch it between my finger and my thumb and do this.
I'm not
but
even
I don't
sure
do
I
that
could
on
English
the
purl. It took me 2 years to Continental purl after, I Norwegian purled first,
but
and
you
then couldn't figure out how to Continental purl to save my life.
Unless you're going to do two-stranded color work back and forth where you have to purl. I don't think you're going to have to do that very much. So,
but it helps because some people have come in and gone, so how do I do this?
And you say, hang on, my boss will be free in a minute.
Hang on, hold that thought, because I knit different, and they're like, what, there's options? And I'm like,
and some people will come in being Continental knitters, and sometimes I have to throw Liz under the bus then and say, well, how would you do it, Liz? Because I don't Continental knit that much.
I do like Continental knitting in public, because then crocheters think I'm crocheting, but there's something weird.
And I will say, when I tink, which is what I'm doing right now, backing out, I do a thing where I will take it back and forth under these two fingers to hold tension and keep going. So I'll get 3 stitches in, and then I'll lock it again, and I can build up a whole bobbin on my fingers.
I just keep wrapping around my finger.
Yeah,
I haven't figured out the whole 2-finger. That's ingenious.
That I don't know how I stumbled across that, but that's tension, right, for knitting, and then I just keep going. Anyway.
Genius.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Is this the... Oops, that was the one I didn't have to back out. But I have now, so I'm going to put that down.
It was like, wait, why is it I'm not in the right mailbox.
Letter or email first?
Go ahead.
The letter came first, so I'm going to read
the letter. I was just checking.
And we have a PS on the back of this, which I'm going to read first, because we would have read this first before we opened it. It says, P.S. I wrote this and sealed it before I saw all your recent sock posts. So maybe I get to talk about socks for a few more minutes. Yay! Okay, so let's see. I think one or both of us have read this. I haven't read this. You've read this.
I read it out loud to you, but you were doing other things, so it might not.
Okay. I think I'm warming up. Okay. Excuse me. Dear Becky and Lizzy, happy autumn. Same to you. I hope you're both well. My question this week is about socks underlined. What is your favorite sock pattern to use? I like toe up and have used several different patterns for basic socks. with varying results. Related question, and we'll go back and process this one by one. Do you prefer making a turned heel or an afterthought heel, or perhaps another style I haven't heard of? And I wish I had more completed socks to show off to you guys to talk about this. We might have to revisit this again, but I've only used a turned heel myself. I just wondered if there's a recipe that helps with ensuring a good fit. And I have to say, disclaimer, I'm not an expert. I'm learning a lot about socks currently. So thanks in advance, and thank you for your awesome YouTube channels. I watch episodes back to back as background noise while I'm working around the house. It's like having friends over. Take care. Sock it to me in Brevard. I love everybody's names. Like, we have to like catalog all the fun names people are coming up with. Sock it to me. So, okay. And thank you for the kind words about the YouTube thing, because it's fun for us to do, and it's even more fun to hear people actually enjoy it, and we're not talking into the void. So yeah, I mean, this is just a fun project for us anyway, but it's kind of weird to like think about people watching us. Oh my gosh. I in the very beginning, I started going, I would watch us too. Yeah. I don't do that anymore. Yeah. It's too weird.
We watched for a while, and then it was like, and then
because it was like, look, we're on YouTube, and now it's like, well, and we also are in some ways too busy. Yeah. So, and everyone's like, that's a good thing. I'm like, but is it? Busy doesn't mean rolling in money, which is not the be all and end all of life, but it does help with the shop maintaining during a pandemic. So, moving on. Socks. Yeah. Liz is like, dude, not the letter. I know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It happens.
I wasn't apologizing to you.
I know. It's okay. It happens.
Okay. Okay. What's your favorite sock pattern to use? So, where did I put it?
I don't know.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
I think I do.
That's as close as to fingers I come on YouTube. I have a couple of different socks going here, and this is my experiment. So the first pair I made for like in my flurry of yay socks that you all heard about is very similar to the second pair I'm making, except I went down needle sizes. Ha 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 ha. And okay, hot mess. Let's see if I can untangle this. The first pair I really got into were toe-up socks. And this looks like a hot mess, but it's not really, but I'm not necessarily going to take the time to completely undo these right now. I highly recommend separating your skein of yarn into 2 skeins so you don't have to worry about the tangle that I'm working with.
She now. Just likes the challenge.
Because, oh my gosh, this is just totally falling apart on me. So it's in its own bag right now. I do like a challenge. That is the PG version of Hold My Beer. So this is a toe-up pair, but it's not the classic construction most people think of when they think of toe-up. When they think of toe-up socks, they tend to think of it starts at the actual toe with only a few stitches and expands in all directions. And the pair I learned was from the yarn store where I was in Liz's position. I was the Minion. And Bumbleberry Yarn and Gifts in Clarksville, Georgia. Shout out to Bonnie and Joe. They wrapped up their shop right around the time I opened mine. So you can't go visit and tell them they're awesome because you heard about them on YouTube, unfortunately. But Joe, all he knit were socks. And he had a pattern. I don't know if he wrote this from scratch or if he modified it from someone else's pattern, but I have enjoyed it and I've taught it, which is why I teach it now, even though I haven't used it a lot. It's toe up, but it actually starts, like if you think about this as your foot, it starts right here with a cast on, and you do short rows to go in narrow, and then you pick up those short rows to go back out, and then you pick up stitches across the top, so then you have a circle, which sounds weird, but it's not. I think it's fairly ingenious. Because then you're not starting from a really weird, like a stretchy cast on. There's all different cast ons to try to make this work. And you have, like, if I turn this inside out, you have a really little seam you can't even see on camera. You have a little itty bitty seam from picking up stitches right there. And I try to plan for that to be like where if you think about machine made socks, you have a little seam right there too. And so that I try to make sure that's on top when I do the heel, which is part of what she's talking about in this letter. And this pair of socks, which is toe up, and this pair of socks, which is cuff down. Like if I hold them this way, they're flat and they're open. Could hold them again, ignore all the yarn this way. They're both, I'm doing both of them 2 at a time, but with different methods. I'm testing a whole bunch of stuff out right now. That's essentially what I'm doing. And I forgot where that first sentence started, so I don't know where
I will say this. For all the sock knitters that have come in the shop, because I ask everybody, because I still haven't made my pair of socks. I'm collecting information. For every sock knitter that's come in the shop, every one of them has their favorite cast on, and it's different from person to person. Like no one has the same one. They all have their favorite method, be it 2 at a time, cuff down, toe up, or double points. Like they're very sold on their method and their pattern. And generally, like how do you find a pair of socks that fits correctly?
Yeah, which is one of the questions that is in there.
From all of my talking to people, it's like I did a couple patterns. I found one that fit perfect. And I use that same one almost
their pattern now.
Over and over and over and over. Yeah. So, and it's all different from knitter to knitter. It's like,
and they will swear theirs is the only way to do it.
Theirs is the only way to pick up stitches without having holes. Theirs is the only way to get fast socks. Theirs is the only way to get like 5 pairs out of 2 balls. The possibilities are endless, but it's a lot of trial and error personally to find what you like.
Because what works for one person may not work for you.
Yeah.
But having said that, what I found with my first pair that I made for myself, that I'm actually like not a shop sample that I'm wearing, which was this one, which was toe up. And again, this is a pattern that Joe wrote, so it is not published on Ravelry anywhere. I have a version. He did it with short rows here for the toe. What I like about this version is, and I've modified it too. What I like about this version is once you learn how to make the toe, you do the same exact process with only half of the stitches for the heel. So the heel and the toe are made, so you don't need to learn another method for the heel. It's also a short row heel, which I think, I can't guarantee, I think it's the same in theory as a fish lips kiss heel. I believe that is, and again, I haven't done a pattern that I've heard this term thrown around a lot. I have not done a pattern where it's like, this is the fish lips kiss heel. And I've been like, oh yeah, that's my short row heel. But I'm pretty sure it's one that involves short rows where you make them going in. And again, a short row is just going in shorter, but instead of having a sharp edge because you either wrap or turn or you do a German short row, you have like a little triangle on each one. So when you go back out, you pick up those triangles and you have fewer gaps. So I'm pretty sure a fish lips kiss heel is the same as the short row heel that I have learned. But please let us know, and I'm sure you will, in the comments if I'm wrong, if I am mistaken. Correct me. I like it because it's easy. I wouldn't say it fits better necessarily than doing what's a classic turning heel. But for toe up, there is a way to do the classic turn heel, which I'll talk about more in a second, doing toe up as well, but I am not familiar with that, so I can't speak to that. I have a toe up book, wherever we keep the books right now, that talks about doing what looks like the heel that is most associated with cuff down. And the classic, like, not fish lips, not short row heel with wraps and turns or German short rows. I will say, before I move off of this where you do the toe and the heel the same. Joe wrote it with wraps and turns, and I changed the instructions into German short rows because they are my favorite. If you're doing stockinette, where all of your V's are on one side of your fabric, then German short rows are my absolute favorite to do. And I think they're the easiest to see because instead of picking wraps up, if you're familiar with wrap and turns, you just have to knit through the middle. They often call it a double stitch because it looks like you're knitting two together or purling two together. So if I'm doing toe up, that's what I'll do. And the other thing I'll say about, in general, doing two at a time, like Liz is saying, one at a time, two at a time. Doing two at a time on either one long circular, like I'm doing here, which is the magic loop method, or two circulars, which is what I'm doing here. It's easier to do two at a time on circulars. And the reason that I like doing that is because then, even though you have to kind of remember to drop and pick up yarns to keep these from becoming one sock, your socks come out the same size.
They're exactly the same.
You don't have to measure and say, is this the same length? Did I do the same number of rows? You turn the heel on both of them at the same time. You do your toes the same time.
The other perk to doing socks or mittens two at a time, or sleeves two at a time, is something I've learned called the dreaded second sock syndrome. So
I have fallen victim to that.
Everybody has.
Hang on, I have to dismiss a phone call. You guys can still see us.
Okay.
Hang on. We can't see us, which makes this weird.
Yeah.
There we go.
So if you do them two at a time, you either have two finished products at the end, or you have two unfinished products, but you don't have one finished and one unfinished. Like,
did you follow that? Yeah. It might feel like it's taking a long time, but when you're done with both of them, you're done with both of them. Instead of, I finished a sock, yay, now I have to do another one. Poop. Yeah.
I would never finish a second sock.
But you can make lots of single socks and then just wear two random ones when you even wear socks.
Well, winter is coming. Sooner or later, I'm going to be digging through my sock.
Now, so I should look up the pattern writer for this, because for cuff down, let's transition to cuff down. One of my favorite patterns is called Hermione's Everyday Sock.
It is like the most popular sock pattern.
If you go on
pattern on Ravelry.
If you go on Ravelry and just go to advanced pattern search and just start scrolling through random stuff, that's probably the first sock pattern you'll see. And I forget who turned me on to it. It might have been Amy D. Amy D really loves this pattern because of part of the heel construction. And she will do them on double point needles. I should say you can do two at a time on double points, but you need two sets of double points. Because shout out to Kathleen, she's doing these mittens that she's trying to do two at a time, but you have to remember to pick one up and do a row, put it down, pick the other one up, do a row. And if you forget, then they're not level anymore. So, because they're not attached to each other in the way that they are on circulars. So, let's see, Hermione, I think it actually was, hang on. Nope, it was there for a second. Hermione's Everyday Socks. It's by Erica Lueder, Lueder. And it has a fun texture to it. And guess what? I'm following the pattern instructions for the heel, for the number to cast on, for probably the toe and everything for these socks. But I'm not doing her texture pattern for the cuff. I want to do more of a ribbing all the way down for the cuff. So I'm doing a knit 3 purl 1, which I think it was an Ann Budd book, said is a great way to get the tension of ribbing, but to see the self patterning or your patterning yarn is a knit 3 purl 1. So that's what I'm doing with these socks. But I'll show you a close up. The heel on this, the heel flap has a little bit of garter at the edge, so it's easier to pick up stitches. Because here's the deal with a classic heel. And if we were doing one of my tips and tricks videos, I'd draw it for you. But a classic, usually for cuff down heel, is you're knitting in a circle and knitting in a circle and knitting in a circle, and you get to where the heel needs to be. And you actually knit flat for a little while. You make a flap. You make across the back of your heel, you make what's called the heel flap, which is flat. And it usually has a little bit of ribbing or something in it. And that's another reason people really love Hermione's Everyday Sock. But Erica Luder has other sock patterns that have the same heel construction, where it may not be ribbing as much because they can feel that against the back of their heel and they don't really like it. It's an alternating rib pattern, which still gives you structure, because heels and toes are where things tend to wear out the most. So again, you've got the flat part of your heel. So if we think about this as like, here's my heel, here's the back of my heel, and here's the bottom of it. The next thing to do to make a sock fit, you've got this flat thing, you have to do what's called the heel turn. You need to actually make the bottom of it be shaped like a heel. And so you take your flap and you start knitting short rows, but not like wrap and turn necessarily short rows. You might slip stitches and do like a knit two together and a slip knit over here, but it'll have you come halfway across your heel flap and then start working your way in and out. So you are turning your heel. You're not only going from the back to the bottom, but you're giving it a rounded shape so it fits your heel better and doesn't rub in a weird place. And then once you have that and this, you need to fill in the area that is in here in order to keep going out with your foot. So you've got the tube, you have this corner that you've created, and then if you were just to keep going, you'd have a hole right in here. This is the best way I can demonstrate it without drawing. And so what you end up doing is you've got your turn down here. You pick up stitches along the edge of your heel flap, and then you've got a ton of stitches. You've got too many to go out with a tube. It would be way too wide for your foot. You need to actually pull it in and it creates a little triangle there.
You're doing triangles here, yeah, and here.
And it's called the gusset.
Yeah.
And by knitting together and purling together with all these stitches, it forms a triangle. That's what gives you a little triangle shape on the side. I wish I had a completed sock to demonstrate. What I do have, can you pass me the huge Christmas stocking there?
Yeah.
This is an Arnie and Carlos Christmas stocking, which is essentially a giant sock. And this one was cuffed down, and this is not a heel flap. This is a short row heel. See how it's got like that diagonal line straight to the tip of your heel? That's a short row heel with wraps and turns and all that fun stuff. A classic sock is going to have a little strip down here and then a triangle in this area where the stitches just kind of gradually go down and this triangle emerges. The best way I can describe it using words. If I ever finish one of my socks like that, I will show you. But it's probably going to be a while because I'm not a monogamous knitter. But I actually really like, if I'm doing cuff down, I like that heel. And I like doing them with double points if I'm not doing my 2 at a time. Hermione's Everyday Sock is written 1 at a time if you follow the instructions, but on 2 circulars. So you can learn how to do a heel turn, but on circulars with that pattern. I think Tin Can Knits also has some really great sock patterns.
They do.
I like how Tin Can Knits writes their patterns because they explain a lot of things and they have pictures. They draw out, they sketch out pictures, which is great. Church Mouse Yarns also has a really decent beginner sock pattern, so I've been told. We've had knitters who've come in with
yes, that. Church Mouse and Tin Can Knits do both a sock weight, fingering sock weight.
And thicker.
And thicker. I think Church Mouse is a DK and Tin Can Knits will take you up to a worsted.
Mm-hmm. When I have taught a beginner cuff down on double points class before. And when we do that, we make what I call my little baby, like
a truncated
baby sock with thick yarn. We do it on like chunky yarn. So you just get the basics of a sock and you learn all the parts without having to knit on size 0 needles. And then you can always move to zeros and take forever on it and love it when you're done. So, okay, I want to make sure we've hit a lot of what we need to here. I like toe up. I've used several different patterns for basic socks with varying results. So, oh, yes, I had one other thing to say about socks, and then we're going to turn to that. So, okay, she says turned heel and afterthought heel. What that is you make a tube. And you might knit with another color of yarn where the heel should go, roughly. And then when you're done, it's an afterthought. You go back after you're done, and you pull that yarn out so you've got these live stitches hanging that you get on needles really fast. And then you stick your heel in of whatever method you want. I have never really done that. I'll be completely honest. Whereas it's simpler while you're going, you don't have to do anything in the middle while you're going. It's more work afterwards. It's great if you're going to put in a heel of a different color, but I haven't done it. I mean, we know we have knitters who will swear by that.
Yeah.
But
and one of our knitters uses that thought process for replacing heels and toes.
Yes.
When they wear out. Like his heels and toes wear out.
They'll wear out first. Perhaps a style I haven't heard of. I've only used a turned heel myself. Okay. So what I will say about fit, because Liz says some stuff to fit. The ones I made, which fit when I knit them, are kind of loose now, having washed them. Even though they have the merino and the nylon and they're supposed to kind of bounce back. I could be laundering them in a different way that will be better. But I'm learning through trial and error, and I'm not an expert. Remember that. I'll say that a million times. That this one, I decided I wanted to go down on smaller needles so I wouldn't feel the stitches as much. And I think I'm going to try to knit them a little snugger than I would if I was just making sure they fit on my feet. I was so excited when I made my socks and they fit on my feet and the heel fit as I was making them. I was like, this is amazing. And then when I laundered them, I'm like, well, you know, when I put my shoes on, the heels can kind of poke out because it's a little long now. So there's some give and stretch for your socks, and you kind of need to take that into consideration. These socks, like toe-up socks, you need to, like these socks, since the heels and the toes are the same size, I would measure how long it took to get to the widest part of my toe and say that's like 1.5 inches. And I've measured the bottom of my foot, and it's about 9 inches. And so when this gets to 9 inches minus 1.5 inches, I need to start turning my heel. However, knowing that mine came out a little big last time.
You might want to do it 8 3/4 or 8.5.
I'm going to start turning my heel a little sooner than I think I need to, in the hopes that they will be a nice snug fit and not get saggy heels. Not because they aren't nylon, but because I made them a little big. So.
We really need to get to the last one. Otherwise, we have 10 minutes.
But what if no Vikings come? Sorry, we need to get to this.
Somebody will walk up at 9:58.
Here's what I'll say. If we feel like we're not done at 10, and I'm only going to take 15 seconds to say this, we will return to this next Thursday. But we're going to start. Go.
Pins, and more pins. Dear Becky and Lizzy, when I block something and it only needs to stretch out a little, I can use T-pins and all as well. When I block a shawl that needs to be seriously pulled out into a much larger size, sometimes the pins don't hold the shawl in place and it slides up the pins to the top. I have tried other types of pins, including blockers, and the same thing happens. So how do you use pins and blockers so they actually hold the fabric to the mats? And I have another thought about this. Is there a direction that they need to go? I put them in so the head of the pin is away from the main part of the fabric towards the outside of the mat, but it doesn't always hold. Mm-hmm. Is there another way to put pins in when aggressively blocking? Seriously, unpin.
So we talked a little bit about this yesterday as we were brainstorming, and she's putting them in what I would consider the direction that I put them in, because we were debating on what. Yeah. So when you put the fabric down and it's laying on the mat and you're pulling it this way, I do the same thing. I don't put the pin in straight. I angle it so it's going in, like, so the head is facing away. I'm putting it in this way. So I'm putting it in this direction at an angle. I'll hold it up so I can pull this way. In theory, That's better because, you know, if you put it this way,
it's gonna pull.
It's gonna just go whoop. So in theory, this is the way you want to put it in, and that's what I do. Even with the blockers, I tilt them slightly. I don't put them straight up and down because things can rise up. And we talked about this. One of the things they were saying. I
think if you stretch a piece too tight, that even when the pin is angled in, it pulls everything in.
It's pulling everything up, so everything's going.
If it's pulling everything up and it's pinned, you know, out, it might be over. Like, yarn has a tension area that
you really can't go.
Once you exceed, it's going to be like, nope. And
so, say it's a shawl. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Okay. So if it's a shawl and the pattern says it must be these dimensions, it could be that the give of the yarn or the way that you knit it, which does not mean you knit it wrong. It could mean that it cannot reach those measurements. And by trying to reach those measurements, the whole thing is going to want to go, because it doesn't want to go to those measurements. Like the chain shawl that I made, other ones, I didn't reach the measurements the pattern said, but I aggressively blocked it, but I stopped when it wouldn't give anymore. So that could be one thing. You could try angling them more and pushing them in more, so there's no way it can rise, but then you're pushing into your carpet or your floor, or you're doing damage to your pins.
Find the middle of the mat, you know, where you can slide it, keep them as like down an angle.
You could rip your mats apart in theory if you too aggressively block,
because the yarn is going to want to.
There's only so much you can manipulate yarn. You can do great things with it, but you can't make it go beyond like the physical properties that it has. Yeah. You know, physics. so
lower the angle.
Mm-hmm. Did you say you had another idea?
It was the lower the angle.
Okay. Here I had another kind of wacky idea that would take a lot more pins. Again, not pushing your yarn beyond its boundaries. You could put a pin in this way and another pin in this way.
Yeah. And it would kind of lock it.
To try to lock it so it wouldn't rise up and pull this, you know.
Like people do that with.
You could alternate them. That would be interesting.
Bobby pins. Like you put 2 in to keep everything secure.
You might need a lot more pins though.
The other idea that you had last night was blocking wires.
Well, it was to at least raise the issue or the the helpfulness of blocking wires. Which shout out to Jessica. She mentioned off of our last conversation about we were talking about blocking extensively last Thursday, and she said, "Don't forget about blocking wires." And I said, "Yes, that's a great point." I think she uses them especially for straight blocking. I would probably use them if I use them. I don't use them very much. But in theory, they're wonderful. I haven't taken the time to like master them, but what are blocking wires? They are little thin rods that some are thicker, some are thinner. And you can thread them through like every inch or so. If you're doing straight, you can thread them through multiple stitches along the edge of a garment. And then you only need a few pins because you're pulling the
wire
thing
out, stick the wire in place, and
where if I had the time and energy, although this is funny to say it because it takes more time and energy probably to do it my way, where I would probably use them is where I have something with a lot of a scalloped edge where I need to pull corners. What could be absolutely brilliant to do with a really thin blocking wire is feed it through every single little picot edge you need to do. And then all you have to do is you pull on that and you can bend it. You know, it doesn't have to be a straight edge. If you wanted a bent edge to your shawl, you can pin and pull and only put a couple of really firm T-pins in some places, and you have like a balanced edge to your shawl, which in theory is amazing. And I just haven't tested that theory. I know it's there. Instead, I'm like, pull, pin, pull, pin, pull, pin, pull. Nope, that one's a little off. Let me rearrange. I would probably save so much time if I did that. But we only have a couple of sets of blocking wires here in the shop, and I'd have to order more so I could get a pair. And I haven't done that yet. So, you know, that's my thing with blocking wires. Have you used blocking wires before?
I own them.
There's your answer.
In fact,
they're at your house
somewhere.
And see, that's not to say that you shouldn't use blocking wires that we haven't. They're absolutely brilliant. I just haven't taken the time. It would save me time. Blocked, but I haven't taken the time.
I have blocked several things. Mm-hmm. Like, you can count on less than 2 hands how many things I've blocked in the 3 years I've been knitting.
She's a big philosophizer, engager in the block with wear strategy. But that's also because you make massive things that are way too big to block.
Massive things that are way too big to block, and they're garter. And
garter doesn't have to be blocked necessarily.
Garter is so soft and squishy. And if you block it, I'm always worried that it's going to flatten and die. Mm-hmm. It looked like it got run over by a car.
So garter triangle shawls, for the most part, you don't need to block those. Unless you want them bigger, but you're going to lose some squishiness often when you do that. Like what you are wearing right now is a wonderful garter triangle shawl.
This is my second garter triangle shawl.
Okay then. and it's already got a great shape and a good size, and you didn't need to make it bigger. That's the other thing. You knit a lot of shawls on really big yarn and big needles, or bigger than often the pattern will say, or something where it's so big that you'd need 4 or 5 sets of blocking mats to do it.
And then it would be too big to wear.
Yeah, and it already fits, kind of. I do a lot of things that have lace work I'd like to open up. I have a lace, I have a shawl I'm looking at right now. It's the purple Anissa, that it's got a garter side to it and a strip with cables and lace in it. Ostensibly, the cables and lace might look nicer if I blocked it, but I haven't, because I like it. It looks good enough, and it's squishy with the garter, So,
if the stage was pinnable, that's where I need to block most of mine. There isn't spots.
I would hazard a guess that the things that you have blocked are more likely to be like the sweaters you've made and stuff.
No, actually, I've blocked one sweater.
See?
Case in point. That was my red one. And I've made 2 ranunculi and those really Dead Easy, and I didn't. And
they have lace in them. She could have blocked them, but she didn't.
One is silk, so one of the ranunculus is silk, so it doesn't matter whether I blocked it or not. The silk is like a wet noodle anyway. What I have blocked the most of is the Fall River crochet shawl. I've blocked more crochet than knitting. Because it has the lace that it needs to be pulled out.
Often crochet, the thicker crochet does not need to be blocked, but shawls that you want the lace, crochet or knit, that you want the lace work to sing a little or see a little or lie a little more regularly than when you first perform it. Yes.
I will put this caveat on there. I spent 20 years crocheting without blocking, so it's possible. And then I found the Fall River shawl, and I was like, I've got to make that, and it needs to be blocked.
And you're like, eh. And then you did it.
And then I did it and went, oh. And aggressively block. Oh my gosh, it's my favorite sport when I get around to sports. But
anyway.
But yeah, more crochet than knitting I've blocked.
So we gave that question. I think a pretty thorough answer, even though we didn't spend as much time on it. But the person who sent us that email, or anyone else who's listening to this, feel like, but I need to know more, or I would like a follow-up questions. Absolutely. In the comments or emails back, and we will readdress this next week. Send us questions, right? You can, if you would like a question discussed at length or at short length or long length, we'll see what happens day to day, week to week. You can write us a letter
at Dear Becky and Lizzy, Sun Dragon Art and Fiber, 35 South Broad Street, Brevard, North Carolina, 28712.
Just like that. And if you have a pressing question week of that you need answered, like, I have to make this pie right now, would substitute the word shawl, email liz@sundragonartandfiber.com. It's like, oh my gosh, it's for a birthday next week. Tell me. And we'll do our best. So, yeah. so far we've got this nice like rhythm of 1 or 2 questions, and it's working out well. And if not, we can always find something to talk about.
Us?
So,
What?
what? Talking? What? So to review, because we already should be open, but no one has called and no one has walked up yet. We have sitting. What?
It's eerie.
Yeah, I'm jinxing us for the rest of the day. It's also been a quiet week. There's, a lot going on. And a lot of people not here. I don't know, maybe tourist season is over and the shop will be dead for the winter. So you all need to go buy some yarn online. No. We have knit night tomorrow night. So from 6 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, and that is the new non-daylight savings Eastern Standard Time. We fell back. Wow. So from 6 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, get an iPhone to check. They have the time zone somewhere on there. We will be on Zoom with the shop phone number, which is 828-877-3550. That one I know real well because I type it all the time in my Instagram posts. So come join us and hang out. And remember, leave space for everyone to share what they're doing and, talk about what they want to talk about. And we might move the conversation on to other things every once in a while, and we avoid certain topics. So anyway, yeah. And then next week we'll see you again on Tuesday, and we'll have knit night Tuesday night.
Of Liz and Rebecca.
Yes, and the next time we're doing a Saturday thingamadig is the 21st. So we don't have a sit and stitch on Saturday until the 21st. We only do that about once a month currently.
Which is coming faster than.
I'm trying not to think about it. Not because I don't want to sit and knit with y'all, because that just means time is passing. And that's weird. So, bless you. Bless you. I'm going to go turn off the camera and let Liz sneeze in peace. Y'all have a really great weekend.
We love you. We miss you. Subscribe, like, ring the bell. Do
Thumbs
all
up.
the little thingies that,
help YouTube's algorithm stuff.